All right, in this video, we're going to be going over forming the alphabet, numbers, and symbols. So keep watching. All right, in this video, we're going to be going through the alphabet, the lowercase, the uppercase, numbers, and symbols. And I'm going to show you how to form each of them. And this particular guide that I'm showing you here is in the companion workbook, and the Procreate guides can be downloaded from that as well and installed into your Procreate app. Also, I have individual letter work guides, which I'll show you in the companion workbook video, but we're just going to work with these because we don't need to be doing drills in the videos so much as just showing you how I form each of my letters and my numbers and symbols. So to get started, I'm working on the lowercase letters, and you'll see in this guide, though, I do have everything marked with arrows to show you where you should be forming everything. But you don't need that. You could actually just watch me and learn how to do it. But in the guide, I do have the practice layer on a layer by itself and these other layers locked. If I want to turn off the directions, I can, and that can give me some more control over when I'm working on my lettering. So I'm just going to be using the Durango brush, and that's free if you aren't familiar with that. And if you haven't been watching the other videos in this free course, make sure you click back and check out those as well. So sometimes what I like to explain to people when they're forming their letters is maybe zooming in on the iPad is a lot easier for you to get a little more control. Maybe smaller is better for you. I recommend trying both ways to see which works better for your own technique. Now, the key is, and we talked about this in the last lesson where I told you about pressure and how much pressure you should be placing down on the pencil to form thicker lines. The brush that I have actually created has thick lines and thin lines, and different brushes are going to be built differently. So you're going to experience something different with different brushes. So for instance, if I were to come in and one of the brushes I've reviewed is lettering, Callie's lettering. I have a video on that. And you may come in one where she has a handwriting brush, and it's just, there's really not a ton of difference between the thick and the thin. So just know that the different brushes are going to give you different results. I'm going to be using the Durango because it is a nice, more calligraphic style. It has nice thin strokes and nice thick strokes, and that's just based upon the pressure that you're placing down. Because I could come in and go real thick if I wanted to, and real thin. But again, it's based upon how much you're placing. So you want to get used to this. Using the drills like this, like taking the letter A, one letter a day is perfect. Taking the A and just doing it again and again and again. When I was doing traditional brush lettering, I used to have stacks of papers where I was just writing everything. I look like a mad woman. But the beauty about doing it on the iPad is I don't have to have all of that extra paper. So with this brush, you may decide you want to adjust the size of it. That's totally fine depending on what you're doing. But you're going to start out for the letter A forming the loop around. And we're going to start with a downstroke down and an up. So as I go down, and I'm going to do it less just so you can kind of see it. As I go down, I place more pressure, and as I come up, I do less pressure. And then I lift up my pencil, and then I form this downstroke and bring it up into a thin stroke. So I'm doing it deliberately and slowly. I'm taking my time when forming the letter. A lot of people, when I see them doing their words, they're like, "Ooh, I gotta do it all at once." And there is a style for that, and that's okay. But this is actually going to give us a little bit more control when we lift up the pencil and deliberately form each section of the letter. So let's start with the A. So again, we're coming down and coming up. And then we're just forming it like this. And you may find that you didn't like how it didn't connect there. Just undo it and start it again. Now, also I find I do better when my iPad is traditionally angled toward me. So as I'm doing this, it may look a little more wonky versus what I've put in my lettering guides for you guys. And that's only because I formed all of these while having it angled at me. So get in a position that's most comfortable for you. So let's go ahead and form the letter B. And again, these are my style lettering. You can form your B's and your other letters different ways. So we're just going to start by bringing in the entrance stroke thin, come around and come down thick, okay? Then we're going to lift up our pencil, go up, thick, and loop it around like that. So for the letter C, it's just one motion. We're going to start a little thin up here, come down thick, and bring it up. So as you're doing these letters, you're going to get used to it. Now, the individual guides that I have for drills have the grid with the, so you can keep all of your lettering straight. That's another thing I notice when I look at brand new lettering, iPad letterers, is that their letters are kind of all over the place. So you want to get used to forming them in one direction so that they all look very cohesive. And that's why we're doing the script lettering, is I want you to form that natural angle calligraphy style first before you start forming other styles. So with the D, just like the A, we're just going to come around and form it, lift up, bring it around and up like that. And then with the E, it's one motion. So we're just going to start right at the middle area here, come up and around thin and down thick and up. So again, if we don't like it, just hit undo. Something like that. Okay. All right, so let's go ahead and form the letter F. This is how I form my F. A lot of people form them different ways. It's completely up to you, but if you'd like to mimic my style, this is how I do it. Similar to the B, where we have the entrance stroke that comes in thin, thick down, and loop up. And sometimes I take that and actually will bring it around like this if I'm feeling frisky. All right, so for the G, I'm going to show you how I do it with the little flourish in it. You can certainly avoid the flourish if you'd like, but we're going to talk about flourishes in another lesson. So with the same way we did the letter A, we're going to form that first bowl there, and then we're going to bring it down, come up, loop thick. See, notice how every time I go down with my pencil, I press harder, and every time I go up, I release pressure. So let's talk about the letter H. Same thing with the B and the F. We're just going to come in with the entrance stroke thin, down thick, release the pencil, come up and down thick, and loop it up like that. Curve it up. All right, with the letter I, we're going to do it in two motions there. We're just going to go up with an entrance stroke, release the pencil, come down thick, and bring it up. And then we're going to dot it. And you want to make sure you dot your I about the same width as your pressure in that letter, okay? Sometimes I see it where it's little like that, and I've done that. Try to make it about the same width as that. All right, so let's go into letter J. So again, we're going to be doing two motions to create this one. And we're going to do an entrance stroke in and then down thick, but this time we're going to come back and around and loop it in, kind of like we did like the B here. So we came in and around like that. And then we're going to create a nice thick a dot to it. All right, so for the K, okay, some people struggle with the K. K is one of the letters I struggle with the most. And I'm going to show you what I do to create mine. I do the entrance stroke thin and then come down thick and release my pencil. Normally with a downstroke, you're going to go thick like this, but I like to go thin with mine, and then I like to create a semi-thick one coming down where I now will form it and come up like this. This is just how I form it. It probably isn't technically correct. Certainly do what you most feel comfortable doing. All right, with the letter L, we're gonna do two motions here. We're gonna come up with an entrance stroke thin, down with an exit stroke thick, and then back up like that. So it's thin, thick, and around. All right, so let's talk about the letter M for a second. I find that forming the M in multiple strokes makes it a whole lot easier as well. We're just going to start with a thin stroke up and let go, come down with a thick stroke and let down and let go. Then I like to form mine in one single stroke. I just come up thin, down thick, up thin, down thick, and up. So certainly feel like if you don't want to create a curve down here, if you want to just do more like this, you certainly can. And it's the same way with the in, down, and up. All right, so let's talk about the letter O for a minute. The letter O is usually formed in one stroke. So you're going to start in the middle like you're doing a C kind of. Come down and bring it thick and then up thin, but instead of stopping like you would the C, you'll come up and around and just loop it around like that. That's not the prettiest O, but I think you guys get the gist. Okay. All right, let's talk about the letter P for a minute. Now, I tend to form my letters where a P P, I like to do it where the line comes up and around. I have like another form of that letter as opposed to just starting here and coming around. So I tend to go up with an entrance stroke, down with a thick stroke, and I will let go, but then I will come up with a thin stroke and then loop like I do the B, the bowl of the B there. So I tend to do that. Certainly do whatever is most comfortable for you. All right, the letter Q, similar to an A, it's just that we're gonna bring that down lower than we did the A. We came up here, so we're just gonna bring it down lower. So we're gonna start like this, bring it down, and come up. And I drew over here. All right, so let's talk about the letter R. This is how I form my R's. I know some people form it more like this. I like to form mine with a loop. And it comes just above the X height. So we're gonna go up with a lighter stroke or a little bit thicker and come down like this. So you'll see I applied less pressure, less, and then more, and then less, like that. So with the S, I like to form it in 2 strokes. I like to come in with a thin stroke, down with a thick, loop it around, just like with the B. I'm gonna bring it out thin like that. So with the letter T, we're just going to start with a thin entrance stroke, release, and bring down a thick one and release, and then come across with your crossbar. Some people are more comfortable coming this way. Certainly do whatever is most comfortable for you. All right, with the U, we are going to form pretty much the same shape both times, but we're going to create 2 steps in it. So we're just going to come down and around and up, down and around and up to form the letter. Now again, I'm going to mention this, you know, a lot of you guys like to do everything in 1 stroke. If you can do it, great, but I recommend doing it broken down because you're going to get a better feel for forming the letters and things are going to start feeling more consistent and like you deliberately made sure that they looked, you know, similar to each other. So with the V, I just start up a little bit up here on the X height, and then as I'm coming down, I go thicker, and then I bring it up thin. So something like that. So the way I like to form my W is I like to loop my W around as it comes out because it forms nicely to other letters as opposed to trying to bring it around. Sometimes with an R it can get a little weird and I wouldn't do that there. But basically like the M, you're just gonna start it up and bring it up. Not the M, I'm sorry, the U. You're gonna start like a W and bring it up. Now you would normally, I think in traditional letter, you would bring it out like this, you know, and add your letters to it. But I like to take mine and just loop it around. It doesn't work for every letter that it connects to, but it is kind of a fun way to add a little bit more interestingness to your lettering. All right, so let's look at the letter X. With the letter X, we're going to be starting with the X height. Now this is a little hard on here. I'm not showing you on here the lines so much, but just forming the letters itself. With the X, we're just going to bring it down and around and up again. So it's like a thin, thick, thin. And then we're going to take and bring a line down. We don't have to go super thick with that line. We can keep it pretty thin as it comes down and crosses through it. Normally with a downstroke, you would go thicker. So if that's what you want to achieve, do it. I like to do more of a thin line. All right, so the Y is going to be a lot like the G. So we're going to start like a U with a thick and then a thin up. And we're going to bring it down and just loop it around like this. So as I bring it down thick, I loop thin up, thick down, thin up, and thin out. And then the letter Z. So with the Z, we're just going to create a line like this. So it's going to be in about 3 steps. So one thick down, and then one that goes around thick and out like a letter B has in the bowl. So we just formed the lowercase letters. You certainly need to take some practice, get used to them. We're committing things to muscle memory when we practice them over and over again. So pick a letter and just do a whole sheet of A's or a whole sheet of B's and work your way through them. All right, so now we're on to our capital letters. And just like I did with my lowercase letters, I'm doing them all on one sheet for you so you can watch me. These are set up as individual practice guides in the companion workbook, so you can do all capital A's on a sheet, all B's, etc. So for the capital A, what I like to do is just come up, and I like to do this in 2 strokes. So I tend to come up in a thin and I loop it around thick and up in a thin. So I'm just creating my letter like this, and then I'm just crossing it through the middle. With the B, I'm going to form it with a thin stroke up one time and release, down thick, and then I'm going to do 2 more strokes. I'm just going to come in here and bring it around thick and then thin. So I'm thin, thick and thin, thin, thick and thin as I bring it around. All right, for the letter C, I like to start my capital letters with a little bit more of a flare at the top. As you start learning flourishing, you might be able to just start bringing in more kind of like that. But for this, we're just going to start with a circle instead of doing it straight around. So it's pretty much like the lowercase c, just with a fun little circle at the top, like that. All right, with the letter D, similar to the B, we're going to start it up and bring a downstroke. And remember how I made the P go like that at the bottom? I do that at the bottom with a thin and bring it around like that. It's getting into my letter E here. Not everybody likes that, and if you don't like that, certainly feel free to form your letter D up here. I don't care. That's just how I do it and how I like to create my letters. All right, and E is like a backwards 3 pretty much. So we're just going to start with a thin stroke and bring it around, and we're gonna do this in 2 swipes. So 1, 2, up like that. Actually, I didn't even connect them, did I? See, sometimes I like to go bigger so I can see them. All right, let's talk about the letter F for a minute. This is how I form my letter Fs. What I like to do it is in 2 strokes. So I'm doing a loop similar to what I do on the lowercase y. I'm just going to come in with a thick stroke down. I'm going to loop up thin, thick, thin, and out. And that's going to be my crossbar for the F. And then I'm just, oops, I didn't mean to delete it all. I did though. I'm just going to make that my crossbar for my F. And then I'm just going to take and do another cross across, a line across, a mid-stroke across there. So with the G, I mean, I tend to do my capital G's like my lowercase g's, except I tend to make the bowl a little bit bigger. It's hard to tell on here, but on the practice guides, you can see more of that. So you would do a little bit bigger of a bowl than down here. That might be a little bit more realistic of one. All right, so with the H. So for the H, we're gonna start up with a thin upstroke, release the pencil, go down thick, and cross through like you do the B at the bottom of the bowl. Okay, just like that. And then we're gonna do a thick one to round it out like that. All right, again, people make their eyes differently. I is another one I don't really like making. I tend to do a more, when I do my lettering, I like to blend in a lot of just regular print lettering, sans serif lettering. So I tend to do it with my I's and my E's a lot. But to do a more traditional one, it's just more so like that. You do a stroke this way and then you're gonna do 2 this way. I've seen it done a million different ways, so certainly make your eyes the way you would like to do that. So a J is going to be kind of like a G in a sense. We're just going to start out towards where our downstroke would come with a thin stroke up and then around and cross it in. So it kind of resembles a G in a sense, but it's not. It's a J, obviously. All right, for the capital K, I do it a little differently than I did the lowercase. I do intern stroke up thin, downstroke thick. And I usually will bring 1 stroke and I will curve it around like this. So it's kind of like that. So that's how I form my K. Sometimes I don't like the K, and so letters I like to introduce as more sans serif mixed in with my cursive later on when I've got more control over my lettering, and if you want to do that, is my E's, my I's, my K's, my R's. Sometimes I tend to do those just in plain sans serif letters. All right, so for an L, you've probably seen this. Looks like Laverne from Laverne and Shirley. Okay, so all you're gonna do is start with an intern stroke that's thin, come up and around, go thick down, up and around, and kind of bring it like that. Maybe not as thick, but something like that. Okay, so capital M is very similar to the lowercase m. I tend to vary the height of the 2 hoops just for a capital letter. I come up with a thin, release, down with a thick release, and then I do the two together, but I make that top one higher and the second a little hump in that a little bit lower. And the end's going to be formed the same, like that. All right, so for the letter O, a little different than the lowercase, we're not kind of looping it through. We're just doing a traditional O like this. So it's down thick, up thin as it connects. All right, so the letter P, for capital P, I don't do it like I do the lowercase. I actually do an entrance stroke thin, I do thick downstroke, and then I do bring my P around, my bold to my P around, connecting at the top like that, just to kind of identify it as more of a capital letter versus my lowercase. All right, Q, we're gonna form a letter O, but then we're gonna put a little, I don't know what that's called, but we're gonna do that. So we're gonna come around thin, thick up, and then just thick, kind of thin, thick down. So it's like thin, thick down as you create it. I should probably know those, and I studied typography in college, but some things you just don't repeat enough, so you don't remember. Okay, so the letter R. So just like we did the P, but we're also gonna add in a little loop to it down here. So we're gonna entrance, whoops, I changed it to a white. I didn't mean to do that. We're gonna do a thin entrance stroke up, thick down, create that little bowl like we did the P. And now we're just gonna bring in and bring down kind of that same shape we did right here as we formed the tail of the R. So for the letter S, it's one big motion. I just do kind of thin as a round, thick as I come down, and thin as I go back up. The T, I'm going to form with a thin stroke this way, thick down, and thin as it comes up and around. All right, so let's talk about the U. Same thing as the lowercase u, except we're going to create like a little entrance kind of stroke to that. Bring it down and around as it goes up. So I hope you're seeing how I'm forming my letters. I'm releasing my pencil quite a bit, so you get a good idea of how I form letters. I feel like a lot of people that'll be an aha moment for them. V is done the same way the lowercase one is, it's just bigger. The capital W, I tend to bring the entrance stroke in, thick down, and I just kind of come up a little high and loop mine. And the X, I do the same way as I do with the lowercase x. Y, same thing with the G. That's going to be bigger up here than the lowercase one. So the lowercase one might come down like this. See how that's bigger compared to that one, compared to the lowercase? And then the Z, I tend to do mine traditionally like a print Z. So that's our capital letters right there. So again, just start practicing each letter. Get it out and say, okay, today I'm gonna work on my A's, today I'm working on my B's, today I'm working on my C's, and just start mastering them. Get them drilled, get your muscle memory in your hands going so you really develop your own sense of style. All right, next we're gonna start working on numbers. So again, this is part of the companion work guide. If you would like to purchase that to practice over my letters, you can, but you can also just watch me and see how I form my letters and then just do it on your own. So for my ones, I do again 2 swoops where I'm just gonna go up with a thin stroke. That might be too thin. Up with a thin stroke, down with a thick stroke. And that's how I make my 1. My 2, I do it in 1 motion. So I start thin as I go up, thick as I come down, and then thin as I come around like this. My 3, I do in 3 motions. So I do 1 across, 1 down, around, and loop a thick into a thin. My 4, I'm gonna make into 3 motions. I just come down once, across once, that's not the best. Across once like this as a mid stroke, and then down as I bring that across through there. My 5, I'm gonna do in 3 strokes as well. 1 where I'm gonna go nice mid stroke that way, down with a thick, and then with a thin, thick all in circle as I come around like this. My 6, I tend to do in 1 stroke. I know some people who do it like this. I don't. I like to do mine in 1 stroke. I like to come around like a letter C, but bring my bowl up and around like that. doesn't look that good, but you get the idea. All right, 7, I'm just going to do a mid stroke across the top and then bring it down into a thick stroke that way. So the 8 is like making 2 O's that are like the capital O, not like the lowercase o. I do it so I go around and then around like that. That's how I make my 8s. Some people prefer to make their 8s do whatever you feel comfortable with. I like to do mine like this. And the 9, just like the 6, I tend to do mine in 2. I know some people prefer to do 2 strokes. I like to do mine more like that. So again, do what's most comfortable for you. And then the 0 is like the letter O. So with this, the key is going to be making sure your letters are consistently lined up. And when I show you words, I'm going to show you how that looks on those grids and how important grids can be to you when it comes to forming your letters. Okay, so in the next section, we're going to talk about symbols. I'm just going to go over basic symbols. I think you guys get how to make a period or a quote mark or that kind of thing. These are just going to be more like the more unique symbols to the lettering style itself. So practice your other ones if you really feel like you need to. But I'm going to start out with the exclamation point, which is very similar to the one when, you know, the strokes we were doing, the downstrokes, and then the dot at the end, and want to make sure that it has about the same thickness between the two. So with the question mark, we're just going to come up thin, around, thick down, and down until it kind of forms there, and the dot being about, I like to do about as thick as what I've done up here if I can. To me, that just feels a little more natural. Now the number sign, or hashtag as so many people like to call it, but is the number sign, is formed by doing 2 downstrokes that are parallel to each other and then 2 midstrokes that are parallel to each other as well. So the at symbol is actually made with the letter A and then circles around it. So we're just going to form the lowercase a like we normally would. So we're going to do up and around. So it's 1 stroke like this. And then instead of stopping here with the letter A, we're going to continue it around. So we're just going to continue it around. So as we came up and around thin, we came down thick and up around thin. So this is how I make my dollar signs. Certainly make them however you wish. I do the letter S and a thin line down. If you feel like you need to, certainly do whatever you like. That's just how I do the dollar sign. And I'm sorry, this was US based. There's other symbols for money, but I'm just gonna stick with this one. So let's talk about the ampersand sign. There's a few ways you could do it. You could do ampersand signs like, you know, I've seen them done, I don't know, I can't remember how, like this, I think. But I like to do mine like this. I like to form the letter 3, so it's thick, thin, through as it comes around. And as I form that 3, the next thing I do is take my pencil and just do a line up through it to form that right there. All right, and so now for your percentage sign, start with doing a downstroke at an angle that's thick, and then you're just gonna put little O's or zeros to the side. I like to do that first so that those are kind of even when I'm doing that. All right, so that wraps up the formation of lowercase letters, uppercase letters, symbols, and numbers. And we're gonna dive into words next. But again, if you want to download the companion workbook at my website, it does cost money, so it's just something that helps me offset my time that I put into the free course. It's not required, but you can get all of the practice guides and you can get all the letters on their own pages with the grids so that you could follow along and practice with those as well. I have all the lower cases, all the capitals, all the symbols, and all the numbers in those that we covered are all on their own individual layers. All right, I'll see you guys in the next video.